Yeah, so did I.
Compared to 15
I know. We not all of us love you.
Here's what really happened. They're
All right, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. Is there a way of seeing how many people?
No, it's not your father.
You.
That's whatever my presentation is. Just trip. You're like on vacation. What's promo?
I should get my mom.
All right, everybody.
It's sort of like, man, this summertime.
Welcome, everybody, to CosmoCon, as we're calling this thing.
You look healthy.
It is.
Just wants to get started on time.
It's my privilege to welcome everybody here, and man, it's just so good to see you. It's awesome. Thank you for coming. I know a bunch of you are calling out of work today that you wouldn't have otherwise, and I appreciate it. A bunch of cool speakers, and some not so cool ones too. So we tried to mix it up. We accept everything.
You like that, Russ?
I just wanted to say, as we were prepping for the reunion, I was thinking about how much I love our class, and putting together this CosmoCon thing was really, I was hoping to do three things. One is 10 years in, we've got a bunch of classmates who are experts in their field and have so much to learn from. And 10 years ago, we were bright-eyed and sitting here and learning from experts. And now, in many ways, we have classmates among us who are those experts. And so I thought it'd be a cool opportunity for us to learn from each other. The second thing, for me personally, it's just a bunch of nostalgia. Right? So I spent a little bit of time on campus today, walking around, and for me, the MBA program was a very formative point in my life, and changed the trajectory, even as an adult, from what was happening up to that point and what has happened in the subsequent 10 years. And so the nostalgia of getting together in a classroom, like our first sections, and learning, having that opportunity. And then the third thing was kind of a mixture of the two. I think that personally, I find fewer opportunities to talk with people without leading with a title or leading with, hey, I'm, so-and-so doing such and such, and having that with me. And one of the things that I love about talking and visiting with all of you is we came from a period where a lot of that was set aside, right? We were all in some ways starting over, and I don't have that opportunity that much anymore to talk to people who don't know me as Russ, title or whatever, but as, hey, here's the guy that struggled to get an internship for the first half of the year and was really worried about it, or any of that. And it's nice to be able to go back to that, and just with this group to revisit that. So anyway, I did just a quick calculation. Anyway, we have classmates now in 10 countries, 27 states. I think we've got about 70 who are going to be here out of a class of 160. So it's awesome. And thanks for being here. With that, I'll turn the time over to our first speaker, Mr. Aaron Fisher. Woo. Aaron, leading with title. Aaron is a senior financial director or senior director of finance at McAfee. He and his wife Tressa live in Dallas. 5 kids?
5 kids.
5 kids.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's good to be back, you guys. Just so many great familiar faces. Oh, man. And Russ, thanks for putting this together. It's a great idea. I seriously don't know why you wanted to taint the idea by bringing me on, but I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to you guys for a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is spend some time talking about some of the roles that I've had to give context for the lessons that I've learned. And the topic really is what have I learned in the last 10 years? Probably some of these lessons you guys have learned. Maybe you haven't yet, and this will inspire you to learn them. I don't know. Or maybe you'll hear it and be like, I don't want to learn that lesson. But so my first job out of business school was a senior financial analyst at Intel in Oregon. A lot of you know that I was so excited to go and live in Oregon and work for Intel. And what happens is they place you into a job, though. You don't get to choose your job. It's a huge company, right? They have this huge finance class, coming in, and they place you in a job. So I got put into a job called ICOST, an area called ICOST. But what it really was is like a finance group that supported all the other finance people doing the costing analysis for all the chips and wafers in the system at Intel. I had no choice in the matter. It was like mathematics, IT, and process. And that was the job I was placed into. It was like, wah, wah, wah. Here I am, this hot shot. Right? Here I am, this hot shot. Just have graduated, out of the Marriott School of Business. They don't know that I got an A in Hal Heaton's class, right? And they put me here, right? And, what could be more nerdy and boring than supporting a bunch of other finance people in a finance role with like applied mathematics and IT stuff, right? So the first lesson that I learned really was, actually leaders would come up to me from like other parts of the company and be like, I'm so sorry, Aaron, that you got put. What do you mean, right? So, but really the first lesson I learned here is that it's okay to do something you're not really excited about. Like sometimes we're going to do stuff that we're not excited about, but we have to find a way to get excited and leverage our strengths to make things better than when you found them. So what did I do? I leveraged my ability to work with people, problem-solving skills, found some ways that I could actually make a change and make things different. And I had a great time actually with the people and took the positives out of the job and really tried to make a difference. And what happened is it allowed me to, get promoted at the end of the year and a half in the job. And that helped me parlay into the next job that I had, where I actually could choose, right? So on to the next one. I took a role as a strategic finance analyst in the Intel Security Solutions Group. So it was actually a guy that had mentored me greatly, who recruited here out of BYU. Some of you may even know him, had brought me into this role and wanted me to work for him. And I was like, great, sounds like an interesting job. And what it was is Intel at the time and had like their security hardware group that did all the security stuff for their hardware. And then we owned McAfee. And McAfee was a software security company. And this group was to kind of bring those together because they had bought McAfee years back and they hadn't done anything with them. So we were like, okay, we're going to do something with McAfee or not? So we put this group together, funded this group, and I worked on really cool, interesting ideas and did all the finance and modeling and understanding around it. And, one of the ones we worked on was taking biometrics and facial recognition and a password manager and combining them together into a product and trying to build out that product. There's a couple other cool things we really did. And I really came like, okay, this is a finance job, right? This is like me really doing finance and helping drive something in the business and making a difference and all that. And it was really awesome. And so one of the things, though, is the Intel Security Group as a whole wasn't quite working out. After about a year and a half, they weren't getting the focus, and they started getting defunded and started getting, hey, we can't do this anymore. They weren't really focused on it. They wanted to focus on their core competency at Intel. So that means that I no longer had work to do, nor did my boss. And as this thing was getting defunded, we were like, what's next? And it so happens that at McAfee, on the McAfee side, there was a big shakeup in the consumer finance organization. And he took a job leading up that organization and said, you want to come with me? And I said, yes. And so lesson number 2, sometimes you're kind of forced into change. I actually loved my job at the time and I didn't want it to change, right? I thought I was doing some really cool stuff and had a lot of great things going, but I was kind of forced into a change. And so, things that kind of seem great and exciting may not work out, right? But if we're flexible and open to pivoting and saying, okay, well, let me try this thing, you never know what can happen. So this job that I took with him, it was kind of jack of all trades. And I was just learning for several months, trying to just become an expert in software subscription business, which, by the way, I know probably several of you worked for companies that have software subscription businesses. I actually really love it and learned a lot of really cool things and continue to learn cool things, and hopefully have tried to become an expert in how things work in that industry. And, I just tried to meet as many people as I could and really try to get ingrained in the business, right? I really liked the team. I liked the smaller company. Intel's a big behemoth. Even though it's not smaller, McAfee's still a big company. I liked the smaller company, more nimble than maybe an Intel was at making things happen. And then all of a sudden, the manager of the P&L team of this group left, and an opportunity opened up. And this is one of those, I wasn't as experienced as nearly as many people as applied for the job. But, lesson number 3, work to have the people that you work for have undying trust in you, right? And my boss had undying trust in me. Like, I had spent time proving myself, and, he wanted to bring me no matter what. He wanted me. And even though there's people that were revered people with 5-10 years of management experience at Intel and all that, because of that effort and time and stuff I'd put into that relationship, he's like, I'm going to hire you into this. And whether you think you're ready or not, whether you're going into this job, right? And it went a long way. It helped me beat out people. And he knew that I would make it happen and build what needs to be built, and had a lot of confidence in me. And that was awesome. So I think one of the big lessons is that who we work with is actually really important. And how we work with them is also important. Giving that mutual respect to each other is key. And I, we know that in MBA and being in business school, but it's interesting seeing my career play out and having some key relationships and how important that has been for me. Then one second here, just to see how we're doing on time. So I love this role, love my new experiences, management, hiring, losing people, building a team, building a culture. I love kind of putting my stamp on how things would be. I owned $1 billion P&L, working through all that. It was just a really great opportunity and time for me. And my boss, he wasn't an easy boss. He was a great one. He challenged me, right? And he worked a lot together. And I learned some great lessons from him. And one of the great lessons that I learned from him is the lesson of trade-offs. And this is arguably one of the most important lessons I think I'll talk about today. In the world of finance, we eat and breathe trade-offs and prioritization, okay? So the concept of trade-offs is where, we make it 100 times a day, right? We only have a finite time of money, resources, times, mental capacity, whatever it is, right? And whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously, we've got to make trade-offs. So, the way we do it in finance is we create something called a ZBB list. That's what we called it in our world, which is zero-based budgeting, which is you kind of put everything you want to do on a list in priority order. It's very simple. Priority order, everything you want to do on a list, put a cost associated with that thing that you want to list, whether it's a cost in heads, money, resources, whatever. And then you look to see how much money you have, resources you have. And then you draw a line below the item where your funds run out. And that's your ZBB line. Everything below that line, you're not doing, right? And it's really forcing your hand to really prioritize. When you see something below that line, you're like, I actually really did want to do that. Let me move that above and move this thing down. Or let me spend half as much on this thing up top. And that way I can fund this, right? Whatever it is. That's key in a lot of the finance that we do. And honestly, in life. And, they've happened from the time of Adam and Eve until this very moment, right? After hearing me ramble for 5 or 10 minutes, you guys are probably wondering if you made the right trade-off to be here. I don't know, right? But if it's a diet, physical goal, spiritual goal, whatever it is, the key to it is what are the trade-offs we're making, I'm like looking at our lives, looking at where we're at, and understanding that I've made a prioritization. I have certain goals and things, and do these trade-offs aligned to those goals and things I want to accomplish. It's very simple. It's a simple lesson. I don't think anyone could stand up here and be like, you guys are probably not like, whoa, blown away by it, right? It's just, but that's, to me, is probably the most important thing in life. And as I get older and look at kind of raising kids and even in the business work that I do, those become so much more important. So that's something that I learned from this boss and has kind of really helped me in a lot of ways. So moving along, I did that role that I had. I loved it, flourished in it, really had a great time. And then just kind of give you a little more background on some other things. You know, all of a sudden Intel became even more, or sorry, McAfee became even more deprioritized from Intel's mind. And they ended up wanting to sell off McAfee from Intel. And so we had a hard decision to make because they actually wanted me to come work for McAfee as a director of their finance team. And it was a great opportunity, but I had a really hard decision to make. So leave nice, beautiful Oregon for hot, flat Dallas. And it was hard. And we were going to be owned by a PE, right? So that's also hard, but I also knew there's opportunities there. So lesson 5 is know and trust a value system for making decisions, right? Everybody's got a different way to make decisions, but know and trust it. For me and my wife, it was heavily spiritual based, right? We sought out the Lord for strength and focus more than we ever had done with this decision because it was hard. We were kind of ingrained in Oregon. And we ultimately felt strong and knew it was the right decision to move to Texas, even though we didn't want to. And it was hard at first and it was challenging. But man, I look back in hindsight over the last few years and look at what's happened personally and professionally. And I'm like, wow, holy cow, that was the right decision. That was the right thing. And it all comes back to kind of trusting that value system that you use to make decisions and having a good value system, whatever it may be. So in a nutshell, the last 5 years since I made that move, I've been through a lot. We've gone through a lot of M&A. We've done some M&A. We took our privately held company public with an IPO in 2020, and I was heavily involved in all of this. We divested the enterprise portion of our company in 2021, so sold that off for $4 billion alone. And then just earlier this year, the announcement in March that we are going private again. We're private now under other private equity groups on a transaction that was worth $14 billion. And again, like my role and what I do is like all fingerprints all over this stuff, which is awesome. It's been fun to be involved, but it's been crazy. I don't know if you guys know investment bankers, but they're like jerks. Right here now. Man, but it's just crazy, like just the demands and everything. So I've had a few kind of aha moments of, oh, wow, check moment. Last one I'll tell you about was when we were going through all this and it was on vacation. I'd worked 100 hours that week. And I was on a call with the CFO, the biz dev guy, my boss, and just I've been doing so much work, making all these things happen, metrics that we needed to do. And the biz dev guy was kind of being a little bit of a jerk to me. I was like, don't you know what I'm doing to get through this? I sent a text to my boss. I'm like, all right, I'm about ready to quit. And he has a Mac. So when you get a text on your iPhone that shows a Mac, and he was sharing his screen too at the time, it popped up on everybody's screen so they could all see like angry faces. I'm about ready to quit. And I was like, oh crap. Like everybody just saw that. But it was a big thing for me because I actually stopped and thought about it a lot. And they need to know this. And I thought about from that moment on, I actually lived more of that ZBB thing I talked about before, that trade-offs idea. I was like, I got to live that. And I've been much more conscious. The last year has been amazing in terms of the things I've said no to, but the things I've prioritized and the success we've had with that. And all, so that's the last thing I just say to you guys is remember the long-term goals. Remember your family, physical health, all that thing. Sometimes there's crazy times and we all been through them, but keeping perspective, that's so important. And, you know, right now, the perspective I have meeting with you guys, you know, one of the things that's challenging to come back to a 10-year reunion is being like, wow, like you guys are amazing. We've all done amazing things. And sometimes you could look at that and be like, man, I haven't done as much. Or sometimes, you know, you might not want to acknowledge the great things you've done. But I think it's so important to like look and be like, wow, like we've come a long way. Each of us could look at our lives and think, wow, there's some amazing things. You know, yeah, we can focus on what we want to be and keep focusing on that. But I think it's important to take time to recognize and just be grateful for what you have. And I just, you know, think you guys are all amazing people. Appreciate, you know, what you've helped me become in those years that we were in MBA school and also after. Like all the encouragement I've gotten from friends from school has just been pretty impressive. And you guys better stop talking before I start crying. So I'm going to stop. But thank you and appreciate the time. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Aaron. Up next, we have a panel on the future of work. And so I will be joined up here by Amy Bennett, Chris Farnsworth. Chris sent me like a 3-paragraph intro to read.
Models.
You want to take this one? I'll take this one. I'm going to moderate this one. I hadn't planned on moderating these sessions, but we had a couple dropouts. COVID is still out there. And Rhett does not have COVID.
That was on his way here and got a phone call from his boss. It was like, I need this now. He was like,
I got one of those and I
welcome to the future.
told someone else. I was
You
like,
should have heard my talk.
ZBB.
That's right. ZBB on that one. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. For those of you who haven't caught up, I'm going to do a poor job of introducing you guys, and then you can correct me as I go through. But Amy Bennett's living her best life in Southern California. She, since graduating, has had a career steeped in organizational behavior. Currently works for Brand Safeway,
yes.
which is a construction amalgamation is kind of how I would describe it from what I could tell.
Yeah, we specialize, Brand Safeway specializes in scaffolding. So they're a subcontractor. They're in 30 countries. And yeah, you got it.
Thank you. And Chris, after spending a bunch of years at P&G, has recently moved back to Utah, brought it back home, and is head of HR for doTERRA. And so with this expertise and my little knowledge on this, we're going to talk about the future of work. We just come out of we are in varying forms of coming out of a global pandemic, and would love to hear just some thoughts on either COVID related or not. What are some of the trends that you're seeing with the workforce now?
Okay, I'll start. I gave you the full introduction.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay. It was snarky comments. So. I'm excited to see you guys. So to the question, work from home, obviously that's been a huge thing, I think, for everyone. And I know at doTERRA, it's a relatively young company, but the founders of the company, and they'll be the first to say this, are old school. And the positive way that we say it is we believe that we do our best work in person, right? And I think that's still largely true, but it's been a huge adjustment. And that started before I went there. I've only been there about 1.5 years, but even just in the time that I've been there, I've seen a dramatic shift in being open to flexibility. But I think beyond that, the positive outcome of that is it's forcing them from the top and throughout the company to focus more on performance rather than, or the way I put it is output rather than input. Because there's a tendency for managers, the easy way to manage is just, are people showing up? Are they putting in the amount of hours? How much are they working? That's kind of the easy button. And, remote work makes that very difficult, if not impossible, to manage that way. And, if you think about it, I'm a big believer that's the wrong way to think about it. Anyway, obviously with hourly employees, you have to count hours, but for most management office type employees, why are you counting the input? It's all about performance. So that's the big thing I've seen is it has forced leaders to get better at managing performances, setting clear goals, giving feedback, and measuring performance as opposed to just the easy stuff.
Can I, before you answer, from in here, how many of you are in a fully work from home? Anybody 100% work from home right now? How many are fully in the office? Couple. And how about hybrid?
So for the people that can't see the hands,
Oh yeah. Thanks.
there were 10 people who were fully remote, 3 people who were fully in the office, and about 7 or 8 who are hybrid.
Impressive.
Facilitator skills, they're very deep.
That's good. How about you? Any trends that you've seen that would call out?
Yeah,
Now, you work in an industry where many can't
right.
work from home.
Right. So I've had the chance to work for 4 companies and 4 distinct businesses, and I've kept contacts with each of those companies. So it's been interesting to see how each of them have pivoted during the pandemic, right? So first company was Taco Bell, have 9,000 restaurants across the globe. I worked in a corporate office of 800 people. Second company, Blizzard Entertainment Video Games. They were adamant about not letting anyone work from home ever, even though the computer programmers were like, I can design games on my laptop at my house. Why do you have to be at work? And their philosophy was, 1, security. They didn't want breaches of IPs getting out or anything like that. So they wanted to keep it confidential what the games were being worked on. And second, there is this perspective that creativity happens best with everyone in the office. And that even though you could work from home, the interaction would affect the quality of the game, right? Then you have Pacific Life Insurance, who's been around for 150 years. And everyone there is long tenure. And so they do things old school, a lot of paper, a lot of pen. And they were just starting this like digital transformation thing right before the pandemic started. And then you've got a construction company where for the most part, all the offices, you have to do your job in person, right? It's been interesting to see how each of them have pivoted. So with Blizzard, they had to let their people work from home. And so what I see is a level of trust and how companies respond to it, because you have to trust your employees that they're going to protect your data. They're going to protect whatever secret thing you're working on. And so it was a forced experiment for the leadership to go, oh, we can trust our employees. And oh, we actually were pretty collaborative, right? So that was a cool shift for them to see that. Pacific Life, they decided to renovate their offices. And so they sent everyone home for 2 years because they were their offices were so old. It felt like I walked into a library in 1994 when I was in that office. And so people legit moved out of Newport Beach, California to like Kansas or these much cheaper places to live, gambling that when the office renovation was done, that the company would see the value and let like hybrid or remote happen. And then my current company, Brand Safeway, I work permanently remote because my headquarters are in Georgia and I'm in California. And I think what you're seeing is trust. And do we trust our employees and how does that work? And I think that goes to focusing on output versus stuff. And so you've got some companies that put monitors on people's computers and like they can't even like check their like non-work related stuff. And I think employees are not going to put up with that anymore. And the companies who have the lower trust are going to have the hardest time finding employees. And so I think companies are going to have to expand the trust for the ones that don't have it.
Yeah, really interesting. I find that in my team, we have internal tension here where like broadly we are very open, very flexible. I mean, COVID forced us to do that, but we're pretty on board. But I have a particular conversation going with one of my managers who's like type X, type Y, and like, can we trust the people? Are they actually gonna get things done? And it's an interesting ongoing thing. With that, do you find that companies and employees are moving together in the same direction? Like, are the expectations coming together, or are companies playing catch up?
I think it's both. I think they are coming together and the companies are playing catch up. Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought about that question a lot, and I wasn't quite sure how to answer it because I think that's well said. It's catch up, because in some ways, again, you've got kind of the older school management philosophy, and there's a little bit of a bristle against. I think more and more, especially in recruiting, you see this things flexibility, which used to be a nice to have, is becoming seen as more of a must have. People won't even consider you if you don't give them ultimate flexibility. And that, I think that's been a bit of a shock to a lot of leaders, that especially, again, the ones that I work with directly have, they admittedly, the CEO talks about it all the time. He's like, I'm old school. And at least he recognizes that. But the job market is forcing them to catch up, to get more aligned. Because it's just, to Amy's point, like the companies that don't show trust and flexibility, there are a lot of options out there. We're like, well, why would I go work there when someone else is going to give me that flexibility? Interestingly, though, I've talked to some companies that are kind of, I don't know what the right word is, like rebounding back the other way strategically, where there are some companies where they've said, we are very intentional about, we are an on-site and they position it as like, that's a differentiator for us, because there's obviously a lot of drawbacks, which I'm sure everyone has felt, of completely working remotely, costs on mental health, on all these things, on productivity. I mean, as much as we talk about trust, there are reasons, why for concern when people are completely remote. So I've talked to more and more companies that went that way and are now like adamant about like, nope, we're done. We're not doing it anymore. And we view that as a positive and as a differentiator for us. So I don't know how that'll work. It's an interesting way to position it, but.
Yeah, it is. Kind of riffing on those drawbacks.
Hold up. Dom just walked in.
Nick Anderson. In return, can we just face it on?
Hey, Dom, go for the camera.
Riffing on this lot of drawbacks, right? What will the organizational behaviors, the HR departments going forward, and just companies in general need to do to counterbalance some of the cons that come with remote work or hybrid work? Any thoughts on what successful companies have done to kind of combat that isolation or some of the creative work that maybe gets lost via Zoom?
You're seeing my cynical side come out. All right, so my philosophy is that managers own everything. Like, managers own the happiness of their employees, they own the productivity of the work. And so I think it's on managers to create that and make it happen. And it's on the organization to give them the tools to do it, right? And so in terms of managing the cons, organizations need to empower their managers and give them what they need to do to get the job done and to make their employees work. So like, for example, my boss actually coincidentally lives like 20 minutes away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while she'll be like, can we just meet in person? And we'll meet together for 3 hours and like design out a program or whatever it is that we're doing, right? And so I think one thing they have to be open-minded. They have to empower their managers, and you just have to be able to pivot. And I think that's the thing is like, with the speed of how things are happening, with how fast changes are happening, how fast data is becoming available to us, how much data is becoming available to us, we are moving so quickly. So it's about structuring the organization in a way that can be agile, that can respond quickly, and that's pushing the power down to the managers and letting them respond, and whatever they need to make it happen, make it happen.
Agreed. I'll just add this. I agree 100% with all that, because I mean, you can come up with all these centralized solutions, but at the end of the day, we've got a book that we talk about. It's the manager, right? It's the manager at the end of the day. one thing that we're trying to do, and I saw this shift at P&G as I was leaving as well, is put a higher priority and value on managing people. So, whereas, so I'll use P&G as an example, you'd go through your annual review process and your ratings and your pay is based on that. And very rarely were any of the performance indicators related to managing people. You could look at somebody's work plan for the year and not even know, do they manage people or not? Like, are they an individual contributor or not? Because it was all about business metrics, which again, that is king. But what I often saw was it became very easy to deprioritize your people, or to view them as a means to an end. So, if I had to make a choice between getting this project done or holding my one-on-ones with people, the one-on-ones are going to go out the window, right? And so we've started making that shift at doTERRA to where we're tying more of the year-end bonus and year-end pay into the quote soft skills. How often are they doing those things to invest in their people? Because you can't get away with it anymore. Whereas, in an environment where everyone's on site, if your manager's neglecting you, maybe it's not as big of a toll because you've got a strong support group and you've got to get what you need from other people. But when you're out there on an island, if your manager is neglecting you, then it's problematic.
Yeah, and the confluence of the hiring market as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like keeping people happy is maybe more important than it's ever been, at least in my observation.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to get people back in the door right now. So, yeah. Thank you.
It goes to, what was the term, Aaron? Prioritizing?
Trade-offs.
ZBB.
ZBB, that's what I was looking for.
ZBB.
ZBB, I'm going to start using that. It goes to ZBB. What it means is a lot of those leaders have to take stuff off of their plate that gets in the way of managing their people.
I've seen a trend in adding on culture and people metrics to manager evaluations as well. It's kind of fun.
So in other words, here's the takeaway. Sorry to cut you off, because I think this is what you're saying, is that HR was always the most important function. The businesses recognize that.
Now they're kind of, yeah, that's right.
I'm gonna ask the question, why are the three of you who all started in HR, is Russ no longer in HR?
It's not for everyone. It's not for the
That's right.
Oh, it's funny.
I found that I'm more in HR now than I ever have been. Like at some point, and lots of you guys will identify with this, is that at a certain point, if you go into management, that becomes your job, right? Like you can't do management as a hobby at a certain point, and that you make the deal, and like my deal is now working with people and unblocking them and helping to do that and getting further away from the details and maybe making the difference that way. And so in some ways, like, thank you for enshrining managers or whatever, but it's the most important part of what I do now.
Yeah. And I think the biggest shift just in terms of trends is going to be, it's going to be really interesting to see how artificial intelligence get used and stuff. It'll be interesting to see how it gets used in HR, analytics. In the last 3 companies I've been in, each of them have been on the beginning of standing up a people data analytics team, which I know other functions already have strong like data analytics functions, but now HR is getting into that space in a more sophisticated way than they ever have been before. So that's going to be really interesting to see how things go. It's also, companies tend to invest on consumer and customer facing things, and they tend to, you guys are probably familiar with the term technical debt.
I'm sorry, we got to cancel everything.
Actually, we just have a new speaker.
Tyson Bill.
I sent around an Excel file.
Okay, good. Make sure you enable macros.
Oh, it's good. Where's the interruption? Technical debt, right? It's when you should really do something technical, but you hold off a little bit for this other trade-off, right? I think there's a lot of people debt in organizations where there's things you should be doing for your people, but you trade that off to invest that money for a customer thing or something. And I think we're seeing those debts become due, and companies actually now prioritizing and putting them above the ZBB line.
Cool. All right, we have a couple minutes left, so this is going to be speed round. 2 questions. One, we talked a lot about what's changed. What are 2 or 3 things that haven't changed, or you think will always be true when it comes to work? And then I'm going to flip it and say, like, okay, 20 years from now, when we're at CosmoCon 2044 or 2042, what's going to be different? So we'll start with what's the same. What hasn't changed?
I touched on this, but I don't think 100% remote for everything is going to last. I really don't. I mean, I think it's going to be hybrid. You know, that's not going away. Remote's not going away, but I think it's becoming clear that for a lot of things, maybe there are industries or disciplines where great, it can work. And maybe I'm completely wrong. And maybe I'm old school and 10 years from now, I'll eat my words. But I think, so like buildings, you know, and maybe I'm biased because we have this beautiful campus that we built just in the pandemic happened. Yeah. So like we believe we want people there, and we do remote too. But I just think there's going to be more companies, like I said, as I'm talking with other companies, are kind of rebounding the other way. I think there's going to be more companies emphasizing in person as well as remote.
I think what's not going to change. So my boss and I laugh sometimes because there's a new trend in something, right? And it's usually leadership development. Like in the 80s, it was management by walking around or something. And when you pull back the layers at the bones, those are all the same thing. They're just marketed differently. So congrats, marketers. They're just marketed differently, right? And so I think the way that we approach and develop our people is going to stay the same. I think the tools we use might be different, right? There's a lot of interesting virtual remote coaching stuff going on, which I don't know. I'm on the fence about that stuff. But I think the way we develop our people is always going to be the same at its core. And it might look different, like a different tool, but it's going to be the same.
Cool. All right. And what's going to be different? I mean, 20 years from now, what is going to be something that may be unrecognizable today, or we're starting to see seeds of?
Robots will be doing all the finance.
It's robots.
We already do.
I don't know. I mean, all kidding aside, I think more administrative work in every function. I mean, there's a ton of stuff. We're adopting technology aggressively in HR, and it's not with the intent of replacing people, but it's so that we can focus our energy on the higher level, the investing in people. So anything that can be automated, I think we'll look back on like, why did we ever have a person doing that?
If it's non-differentiated work,
Yeah.
it goes to the machines.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing like with the Industrial Revolution, right? When everything was done by machines, then we came in and automated, and there's this big uproar like, oh, people are going to lose their jobs, but really we just changed skills, right?
Yeah.
I think the same thing with the administrative tasks, how they get automated away. I think people right now are really nervous, like, no, technology can't do that, right? Like, well, actually, yeah, it can, and it will free you up so you can do higher level and more meaningful work, right? Like the administrative stuff is the like widget making stuff of the Industrial Revolution.
Cool.
I also think, in terms
Yeah.
of what's going to be different, I think our organizational structures are going to change. I think they're going to be a lot more dynamic. They're going to be less hierarchical. And we have a lot of trend going on in gig working. So I think the way our organizations are actually structured and how that happens, I think they're going to evolve a lot quicker. I think that's going to be interesting.
I've wondered a lot about the gig work, specifically with software engineering, which is my field now, and how much of that kind of entry-level software engineering becomes more commoditized and gig work for some amount of it. So anyway, well, with that, we'll see you in 20 years. This is recorded. We'll see how well we do. But thank you so much for. All right. Up next, joining us from
I don't have a title.
No. You're next.
Okay.
You're next. Oh,
Yeah. Trying
yes.
to skip over me?
I was actually. Not intentionally.
Yes.
This
Oh,
may or may not work.
don't go.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So up next, just by way of quick introduction, Mariah.
Start now or wait till my.
Oh, we could start now.
Okay.
Or yeah, let's start now and then
Okay,
we'll
you're starting.
go. You're here.
So
If
much
you're
to say.
if you're set. Well, everybody, this is Mariah. Mariah spent the first couple years. Yeah. Mariah Wilson now.
Yes.
So spent the first couple years at Symantec and then graduated, took on the job of CEO of the Wilson household.
Yeah.
And yeah, is going to talk to us about what you've forgotten.
Yes. Russ asked me, and I was like, told my husband, I feel like I should talk about what I've forgotten. And I was talking to Megan about it. She's not here. I think she's listening. I don't know. But she was like, I know the other day I pulled up Excel and my shortcuts were like not short anymore. Like stuff was crazy. And so sometimes it's easy to feel like that. So we're just going to, see how it started. This is how it started, right? All of us, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go make some money after not for a while and change the world. And this is how it started. My father and my grandfather are artists, and it skipped me, but I have hope for my daughter there. Jokes aside, Russ mentioned a few things, but a lot has changed in my life since we graduated, and it's been great. So I worked for 3.5 years. So this is actually kind of a funny story. I got engaged pretty closely after graduation, and my job was Symantec, which I turned down a McAfee offer for.
McAfee.
Ooh, McAfee.
Although Symantec is how it started, how it's going. So I had an offer in the Bay Area with Symantec, and when I got engaged, my husband had a son, so I have a stepson now, but he needed to stay in Utah. So I called and worked with my manager, and he was like, yes, if you come for 3 months, then you can work remotely and come back, like work from Utah, work and come back. And 2 weeks before my start date, he called and he said, actually, they're not going to let me do that. So here I was in August. I said, I'm not going. And I quit Symantec before I ever started. And then I was looking for a job in August, going like, who is doing this? I'm the only one looking for a job in August. But funny enough, the local Symantec office has a really awesome data analytics team, had a really awesome data analytics team. And so they offered me a position. I worked there for 3.5 years, based in Linden. Really cool. We did analytics and finance, and then moved to marketing and back to finance. And I was able to build out my own team and hire some BYU grads, MBA grads from years after mine and after ours, I guess. That was fun. So I got married at the end of 2012, and I had a 4-year-old stepson at the time. So we've since added 3 girls. So there's 6, 4, and 2. And I quit Symantec for the second time when I had my first daughter. And I've been staying at home. Fun thing, my husband started a business, like a side business, and I'm a partner. So now I spend some time working on that, and that's really fun. So that's kind of me. And I thought about sharing, some of my cool insights, like how to make sourdough bread, because I do that now. I'm not going to, because I do actually have other relevant stuff like this. Has anybody seen the movie The Court Jester? Yeah.
Everybody was gonna put their hand up.
I know. You should see it. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but I want you to think back. I don't know if anyone remembers Professor LeBaron's class when we were taking a leadership class. We all had to take that, right?
Uh-huh.
So there was one day I remember so vividly, like everything about it. And it was when he introduced the concept that we should focus on our strengths and making those better rather than focusing on our weaknesses and trying to turn them into strengths. And I remember it vividly because I felt so uncomfortable. I was so nervous. I was like, I don't have a strength. I don't know what I'm supposed to focus on because I'd kind of built my life around being like a jack of all trades. Like I'm not an expert. Like Russ talks about being an expert. I'm like, I'm not an expert in anything. Like I can do this well and I can do this well, but I don't really have a strength. And I think maybe a lot of us have struggled with imposter syndrome. Like I know in my undergrad in computer science, I did very well, but I still felt like I'm not one of these natural programmers. That's not me, even though I was doing really well. And so I think we've kind of struggled with that. And so Professor LeBaron was not, clearly that was not his point, but I can just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure. I don't know what to focus on. And so one of the things that I've learned though is that's okay. So the term jack of all trades, master of none is something that has kind of come across as derogatory. But what's interesting about it is that the original jack of all trades were playwrights. So they would write the play and then they would go to the set and they would help with everything. They would help with the set or the costuming or running through people through their lines or like helping with like directing when the director wasn't there. So like William Shakespeare, jack of all trades. So just call me William Shakespeare. That's what I've learned. I am a jack of all trades, but that's my strength. And so the actual original like phrase is jack of all trades, master of none is oftentimes better than master of one. And for me, that has really proven true. So my career was very successful because I was good at programming and I was good at finance, like marginal at marketing analytics. But because I could do all of them, I was really successful. And then also I saw that, like I've seen that in our startup. My husband is kind of similar where he has like lots of different skill sets. And since day one, our business has been in the black because I have done things like writing SQL for the software that he's building, like database queries. And HR stuff, like I helped hire our first person, set up our HR system, payroll. I do taxes
The
and
most
accounting.
important thing you ever did, right?
Yes, so much so that in fact I'm going to cross off my learning and write that. Yeah, so it's been really fun, and you see it a lot too, like in parenthood. I spend a lot of my time doing stuff I am not an expert at, but I'm doing okay, I think. And so that's, for me, that's just been a big learning is, I'm not a master of anything, but that's my strength and that's okay. This is a cattle guard. I was telling my husband about this and he was like, you don't need to explain what a cattle guard is. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I do. So cattle guard, you guys know what a cattle guard is? Everyone does? Okay. He was a little confused. Okay, so
California, I don't know.
Rancher, right? They don't want to build a gate across every, like where their fence goes, their property line goes. They don't want the cows to leave, but they don't want to have to build a fence and a gate on every road. So this is like bars across a ditch. And then if a cow crosses it, they like get their leg stuck in and it breaks. So cows don't cross it. And people debate if they don't cross it because it looks scary to a cow, like it looks like a cliff, or if it's because they've like learned through their herd, like this will kill you. Anyways, that's a cattle guard. They can die. They don't always die, but they can. So that's a cattle guard. And what they've learned is they don't actually have to build a cattle guard. They can paint the lines and the cows won't cross it. So that to me is kind of fascinating. But a lot of us come from a mentality where, like, I have seen this in my life, and I think our culture too, things need to be like perfect and lined up before we'll do them. And I'll come back to the cattle guard thing. But so in 2019, I was invited to co-author a case for the Northwestern's Kellogg School of Business. And it was this is really fun for the theme. Okay. The class is a second-year MBA class called Artificial Intelligence in Management. Right? So I have like a really good background for helping write this case, but I was looking for I was like looking for reasons not to do it. I was so nervous. I was like, I've been out of the workforce, out of the tech world for like 4 years. The stuff I know isn't relevant. I won't be able to talk to these programmers who did it. I don't know how to interview them. I was pregnant with our fourth child. So I was like, oh, I'm busy. And like, the timing isn't right. And I just felt kind of like I don't know if I should do this, but my dream has always been to teach at a university level. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I did, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences for me. So what I learned relates to the cattle guard here is that we need to like look at the obstacles and see if they're real or if they're just perceived, and don't let the perceived obstacles hold us back from doing something that will help us. Experience is like the best teacher. So we're not going to have that perfect like ducks lined up in a row. And I bet some of you who left work to like do your full-time jobs have seen this. So here's how it's going. Sorry for the poor quality video. I laugh every time I see this picture because it's poor quality because it's from a video. It's a screenshot. But these little calves, they saw like the white line on the road. So they were like, oh, cattle guard. But then they jumped over it instead, right? So that's me now. I jump over those things. So after I published the case, the professor invited me to come lecture it the first time they used it. And I was like, I'm so nervous. Like, I can't teach these kids at Kellogg. Like, I don't know. I haven't been in business school for like 8 years and these things. But I was like, these are dumb excuses for something that could be so life-changing for me. So I went and I did it. And, just focusing on the fact that experience is the best teacher. And let's get those fake obstacles out of the way. Now, here's this. So when we started business school, actually like the entire time we were in business school, we were like hyper-focused. Can you see that that's my resume? Yeah. Hyper-focused, like tunnel vision a lot on this resume. And like I just think back, didn't we do stuff like an orientation?
Oh, yeah.
My resume? Yeah, like tons, and then the Sherpa program and everything. And so we get really focused on that and really good, right, at like fine-tuning everything to look amazing. And I always knew, but the last 10 years have really taught me that not every accomplishment fits on a resume. And there's a lot that we can focus on. We can like look at our priorities. Like I really liked what Erin said. We can look at our priorities, but there's huge strength in like accepting that worthwhile stuff sometimes just isn't marketable. And so I chose this picture because this is me like focusing on some of my priorities. This was a few years ago. My son's almost 14 now. But like understanding where I put my time and effort and feeling good about it instead of there's people in this room that I've talked to a lot about like what it's like to leave a successful career for a little bit and wonder what's going to happen and wonder if it is the right decision, but it really can be, or maybe it's not, but for me, like just really embracing what my priorities are and like just going with it feels really good. So when I was running a team, one of the things that I loved the most, it was the most rewarding, but also kind of the most difficult was when we would hire new grads, like people that had been me in that first picture, like ready to go. But it was difficult because we did really complicated work. And a lot of times there's a kind of a big learning curve on the tech side for some of the MBAs and on the business side for some of the tech students that we hired. And just as a manager, like helping them develop that and grow and like seeing their careers grow, it made me a good manager. But like a lot of those things don't translate to a resume, right? So you could spend all day helping someone, but then you can't really like check a box. It's interesting to think about how you might put some of those like business goals on a management type of paper because it's hard to like quantify them, I guess. But I just felt like at the end of the day, this is what really matters is like the investment that we put in people is greater than any financial investment. And whether those people are, in this room, like people that colleagues, or if they're people on your team that you're managing, or if they're your children or your spouse, like
all of those relationships will really help in the end. So I joked in the beginning about like how much I've forgotten. And the last 6 years of my life have not really involved a lot of like finance acronyms or like social impact stuff like I kind of envisioned. But the BYU MBA, I'm so grateful I did it because like the opportunities it has given me and like the lessons learned, you know, like changing the trajectory. Did you say it, Russ? Changing the trajectory of your life. Like I am thankful to you guys and really grateful to be part of this like great, you know, organization and group of people. So thank you.
And with that, we'll take a break. Find bathrooms, find friends. We'll start back up at 2:15. Yeah, we'll go with that.
No, it's just Schroeder, and I did, yeah. So make one. No, we won. Start putting together one in the afternoon. Oh my God, you have to be done. It's like now you're window. Sort of. So it's like land. You can find cheap land. I don't even know what a cattle guard is. After looking at it, I'm excited. Well, I knew like I love where it is. The miles. Yeah, this guy, he's good. I did the history of my life because they're the ones delaying the end. Stayed up by 7.
But my kind of this 10 anniversary trip, so we're just staying like in Vermont.
I'm just like, it's like.
Got here Thursday night, like
They kind of knew that's what they were.
I'm gonna hang out with like my guys do your stuff tonight. Just hanging out with like friends.
Yeah, it's like I lived in Texas for 8 years. It's great. I've seen it. What's up, man?
You guys all your good.
I really need to ask Aaron. I have. You're jealous of what I'm going to carry. That's trying to carry us. I'm sure.
You practiced yesterday, so.
I'm deep under the world.
You have it. So I made the twin who's balding. That's it. It's growing now.
Yeah, like so our dude's like
How sinus is so much time.
Actually, right on the dial, I think we
You'll run.
You're at there, like
How's that going? You bring us samples?
Right.
Dave, you're at got a CEO, a new CEO. I didn't put I love when they argue. Even if you did it, I don't care. You need all like yeah, like a couple of extra guys from Microsoft,
Lion bars.
and some of that more like discipline, still about how things are kind of like insights that you saw inside of the team. But I could I was like, we got like we need some strategy to get beyond just like. But to say, when he went in Russia, has no idea what it is, and it was their grandfather's day. Interesting. Tried to move it, call them off, and told them to jump in. It's been you know, you're like in the rush to like. Started going. They could have still got that level, but it was more of a. Yeah, it's like he like like I shorts and a t-shirt.
So I guess 20.
I didn't. I'm also so Hey, what else, man? It's good to see you. How you been? Looking good, man. I'm a senior junior. Trying to run a startup or something? Like trying to run a startup? Is that like Nestle? That would be just to get people excited. They're not. Really nervous to get away from competitive. They just want to be an organic, healthy, and all that. Then big things until you're on so forth. And close to the team, like they bought the innovation and like those are on top. Oh, really? Like basically enlist everybody and fudge. And access has kind of been like so.
Ferrero and Ferrara.
It's going to be kind of blocked it. He said no, you die. But our marketing, like, you can't do that. You load check to go buy Ferrara. Yeah, job. She asked about it's good money. Check.
Now this starting to roll out. Because they would know anything.
Pretty wild. And they're like, I didn't even know what it was. I had to like look it up. Yeah, it's like this year. Yeah. They're friendly enough that the people can like do Ritter sport. Is that passive? I don't know. Enough that they're not going to be. They're like, they're support this.
Is one bill. Same thing. They're like Canadian. Get out of there.
I'm getting the talk. Doing. You may not like the real suspect. Your English.
Here, right? Or fine, okay.
I'm hired.
Here for a good time.
Impressive. This is it.
We're just writing checks. Here's a check to write.
Is it anything like Andy? I know. Like strong stupid in one. Like that. I won't give it like it's actually not an apple. Kind of what I have.
Yeah, I want to hear.
I don't have one of those. Like, they work with the army. Like, she's always had this. I started with the bands.
You used to travel. I mean, I'm fine with that too.
Places to pick up. Like, like this. Driving halfway. Then I don't like company. Whatever. Oh, you're gonna stay. It hits you. Like it's like real.
I hated that. I just remember you'd eat chocolate and you just hit whatever.
We're gonna have to get a
Consider anyway.
Either.
actually our picture routine dinners.
First, that's the whole
Was traveling a lot.
use the trademark.
Panel lunches.
Out there as quick as we could.
I'll just give a shout out.
We just launched the Baby Root.
What's the hardest part? The bills. America went to Wells Fargo. Startup company.
Wine is good.
Yeah. Some of the stuff out. You got a Raisinets go look at what's that.
We're like,
You got a smaller box than I'm doing. I gotta get into a smaller box.
just like,
So there, and I'm like, another round of your phone.
That's my jam.
I'm not sure how many people show up. Friday.
I mean, like some of them are just like our core is backing up like VMs and
I couldn't even get on my
it's a big one.
so I could show that I'm doing it work. Couldn't even get on.
Microphone 365.
No. I know. You're doing the overnighter tonight, right? It's like
Adele has a big fitness, Veritas.
next time I talk to you.
Saw that he's looking at people on LinkedIn last week just to see what people are doing and like, oh shoot. Like I didn't say he's a big one.
Tonight.
We know where you're gonna do.
I was trying to think. I was like Texas. Like game was the last game I was here.
It's just like basic.
Yeah, we're
Are you? I don't know.
Keep it more walking around campus or like driving. It's weird. I haven't because even when I visit my brother, he never come down this way.
I don't know how it works, but like
Maybe one more.
that down. Down for baseball. I don't know how it's all.
Sponge candy.
But now that interest rates are going up, like
Double your company.
Like chewy.
at least
And they have almost like I think they have like a
yeah. I'm in North Bend, and actually just like past
have like
it's awesome. When I bought it, I'm like, hey, I could probably
yeah. I feel like I have like Indian face ads.
and then COVID hit. Now, like, I never
That often.
every other 2
We have so much family here coming here.
It's awesome. That's where everybody's coming from.
Yeah, I mean that's
Now, these people who live in Seattle anymore.
I think so. This one.
Like
Junior high.
it's kind of bad, like small town in the
She was like, rest in each.
it's our
It's some of this baby.
Okay, yeah.
Stuff, you know, like which canyon is closest to you?
You're gonna try them out. And you're gonna change your mind?
It was like that.
Yeah?
Mark, I feel bad because like,
Yeah.
the plug in.
I'm gonna let you know too.
All right. And a scent.
Yeah.
And yes, greatest. Only one thing I got about it.
Yeah, oh, it's just a Google slide.
We swap it, but that's probably
Slide link.
I think it's gonna go to the Any ideas? Starting from scratch. Starting from scratch. No, I'm joking. If you're starting from scratch, and I say,
All right, everybody. I know I'm going to cut off these conversations now. We'll have time in a little bit.
For us, it's like, you know, it's like,
Put you on the slides. And Brad is going to. All right, everybody.
wise word.
All right, we're gonna get going.
Everyone needs to sit. Hey, Russ, are you trying to wrangle the group?
I'm trying to.
All right, let's get started.
Finish your family. All right, we'll have more time to visit too. But as we get back going, for the agenda, we're gonna have, just like the first half, we're gonna have 2 speakers and a panel. My privilege to introduce, you guys know Pablo Arias. Joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina, where he works for Flowers Foods, which I had to look up, like Flowers and Foods. You will know all the brands: Wonder Bread, Dave's Killer Bread, Nature Zone, Tasty Cake, which he did not bring for us. Between Ferrero and Tasty Cake, we could have had some good snacks. Not. And Pablo has got 4 kids. 4 kids now, and one of them starting here at BYU in the fall. Take it away.
Thanks, Russ. It's nice to be here. Okay, first thing we got to do is just lower everybody's expectations. It's so nice to be here after 10 years. Can you believe that? Time has passed. I mean, this place was a dream come true for me, and I'm sure for many of you as well. I had so many experiences in here that were life-changing and that I will remember forever. I still remember, I think I had class here, if I'm not mistaken. I still remember the feeling that I had every time coming into a class here. It was usually something like, I should have read that paper. But then the power of prayer, right? Please don't make him ask me any questions, which works sometimes. I'm terrible with names. I'm going to apologize. My memory is kind of going away. The other day I went to a gas station, and after figuring out why I was there, put the card in the machine, and he asked for my zip code. I am not kidding. I had to Google my address to remember my zip code. And, they should, I hate trick questions, right? Just ask your name or something, because you can read it in a card if you forget it.
Pablo's been in North Carolina for 10 years now. So.
in the same home.
But as you know, I'm a little bit older than most of you, Steve. I still remember one time I went to the creamery over here 10 years ago for milk and eggs, and
Adding to reminders.
and so I walked to the cashier. This girl could not be older than 14. I don't know. But, she asked me, "Are you a professor?" I'm like, "What? A professor? It takes more than looks, right?"
It's the bow tie.
It's the bow tie. Yeah, those are from my days of Bank of America. Fun days. All right, I'm going to talk about something that Mariah did not want to talk about, which is bread. Okay, how to make bread. I love bread, as you can tell. There's nothing like a nice piece of bread, crusty, soft on the inside with some butter, right? So there are days that I want to go home and just make bread, right? So this is the recipe. So you assemble your ingredients. But if I Google this, I don't have a recipe for my mother or something. Solve the yeast, activate it by proofing. And you have to Google what that means. I have no idea. You add additional ingredients. You knead the bread, and you keep on going. Let it first rise. And now you figure out you don't have all the ingredients, so you have to go back to the store, get some more stuff. You punch the dough, you shape it, let it rise again, and then you finally bake the bread, right? It's a lot of work. So buy yourself some time, just go to the store and get some. It's cheaper, and it probably tastes better than the bread you make at home.
No.
Well, it's better than my bread that I make at home. So making one bread it's a piece of cake, right, Mariah? It's a piece of cake. Now it's not hard. Imagine you had to bake 3.5 million breads every single day. But you have to be precise, right? Because you don't want to waste. So you have to determine, okay, how many? Okay, so it's not 3.5, it's 3,492 something. But you have, stores buying your bread all over the place, right? All over the country. So you have to determine who's gonna bake what in 48 different bakeries across the United States. I love this stuff, right? I live this stuff every day, try to help the company to go through this digital transformation. We're building the baker of the future. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but in essence, some of the AI that we talked about, the automation, the robotic stuff, production sensors, they actually have sensors that can look at the color of your bread. And then if it's too dark or too light, it throws it to the side. Did it rise too much or not? So all of this stuff going through the lines, automation helps with that. We do autonomous planning, which coordinates exactly what is the demand, how much you need to get from your supplier, how much you need to send it to the distribution centers, the scheduling, your personnel. It's millions and millions of rows of data, and I absolutely love it. All right, by now you're bored, right? You're like, it's just dumb. Why are we talking about this? So let's talk about Steve. Not this Steve. Yeah, different Steve. So when I started with flowers 2 years ago, I met Steve. So Steve started with a company the year I was born. Okay, so 46 years ago. So he's old school. He didn't like any of this stuff, automation, numbers. He thought he could just come in and just, by his experience, just tell, no, this is what we're doing. This is what. So every time we had a meeting to go over some of the dashboards, some of the metrics that we were creating for the company, he always fought back, right? He did not want to see it. He questioned everything, the methodology, everything. And the more we had answers for him, the more he hated the work that we did. And then about 2 months ago, we had, just a normal meeting. And at the end of the meeting, Steve said, "Hey, I've got an announcement. After 46 years of flowers, I'm retiring." And then I want to throw a party, right? But I didn't. We haven't talked about Steve since. He's gone. He was an integral part of everything we did, and now he's just not even in our memory. This $4.5 billion company didn't skip a bit by the fact that Steve is no longer there. And one of the lessons I've learned in the last 10 years is that that's pretty much to any of us. Think about it. Yes, we do amazing stuff. We have a ton of impact on the things that we do. We give a lot of our time, a lot of our energy, a lot of thought process, and we sacrifice a lot for the things that we do. But eventually, the day we decide to say goodbye, we're in the past. And that made me think about, where do we put our emphasis or priorities? I see a theme growing today. There is a book that you may have read it or not. It's The Christmas Book by Richard Paul Evans. I love this book. I read it every Christmas. Story about this little family that moves in. I'm not going to tell the story. But one of the things that he goes through is that he's a very busy person, and he's neglecting the time that he spends with his daughters to do the work that he's doing. And I love this quote. "In my quest for success in this world, I had been trading diamonds for stones." So I think about this a lot, about the time that I spent doing the things that I do versus the time that I spent with my kids. Like it was mentioned, my daughter's coming to BYU, and suddenly dawned on me, in 3 months, my little girl's gone. Forever, right? She's no longer my little girl. And she's coming to BYU, so who knows? She may be married in 3 months. But it's life just goes too fast. And it's very important, I think, to step back every once in a while and analyze what are the things that really matter in life. You all familiar with Clayton Christensen? At the end of his this semester, he always gave this lecture called "How You Measure Your Life." There are 2 quotes that I love from him. First one, "Doing deals doesn't yield the deep rewards that come from building up people." And we talked about building up people earlier today, and the impact that you have, especially you guys who have direct reports, the impact that you have on their lives and the mood that they have when they end their work day to deal with things that are actually important in life. Second one is, I apply the tools of econometrics a few times a year, but I apply my knowledge of the purpose of my life every day. It's the single most useful thing I've ever learned. And I believe that from my heart. I truly believe that, this experience that we've been given of being here in this institution, learning the things that we did and then going out, these are tools for a work that is much more important in our lives, which is the impact that we can have in our families, our communities, our church, the things that we do. And I'm very, very grateful for everything that I learned, the experience that I had, the camaraderie that we have in our class. I love listening to your accomplishments. Even being away a little bit in Charlotte. But it's just how life is. And but you know it, sometimes it brings it all back. And here we are again to another 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. Up next, we're gonna have our second panel. This one, I made up a title called "You Can Go Your Own Way." I was gonna title everything after Journey songs, but stopped with this one. But Adam and Trevor and Nick, if you guys want to come on up.
Feel official with the water bottle.
That's right, you got the water bottle, now you have to talk. They're small ones. We didn't splurge on this. Thanks all for coming to talk. This is one that Pablo, you just mentioned loving to follow along with the adventures of our classmates. And some, I've been with the company for 10 years. I am not that adventurous, shall we say. But we have a bunch of entrepreneurs. And so I've asked three to come and talk to us a little bit about what they've been working on. There are others in the audience who may have some thoughts too, but we'll start with that. You guys each just want to take a couple minutes and tell us what's been going on. What are you working on now?
You want me to start?
Yeah, sure.
Primarily logistics. I own 4 logistics companies. Kind of varies from warehousing, delivery, distribution, transportation businesses. So,
for those of you who don't know, Trevor is a many-time entrepreneur. Is there a time when you weren't?
I've never had a real job. That's what I was telling you. So I've never had a real job.
Yeah. So many in the logistics space.
Yeah, that's kind of where I've landed and kind of made my bones.
Cool. Awesome. Nick?
Yeah, so I have had a real job, several. Went to Adobe after business school.
Hashtag Adobe Life.
Which was like a swear word to me. That's why I left. I was at Adobe for a while in the Bay Area and then moved to Utah with Adobe. And then left to start a software company in the hiring space and HR tech space. And I've been doing that for about 6 years now. So venture-backed, SaaS, kind of typical what's been going on. A lot of what's been going on out here in Utah. Lots of stories.
Yeah, good. We'll get to some of them.
What you guys probably won't remember this. I didn't do an internship during our program. I went and started a little real estate private equity fund, and that was kind of always the plan to get back into it. And so I did take a job in construction and real estate at Intel. Started at the same time Aaron did, and in one of the really crappy positions that nobody wanted, and then worked at Adobe and eventually ended back up in real estate and construction at Adobe as well. And so it's been just a week shy of 2 years for me that I left, and my purpose has been go find holes or opportunities to solve in the real estate brokerage world. And so I just dove in and became one. And about 6 months ago, kind of found that hole or that pain point, and have been creating some technology and a service in the new construction brokerage world.
Nice. I mean, kind of tongue in cheek, but like, how has the real estate market been these last couple of years?
I couldn't have left it at a better time.
Yeah, this was pretty.
If I were smart, I would go get a job again right now. With job shortages, but no, it's been amazing. Yeah.
How many classmates have you relocated back to Utah?
I actually counted just in this room 9 people in this room.
So we need to have that tip for like people graduating each class is like, okay, who is the Utah broker for this class? Would love for you guys to pull back the curtain. Right? Entrepreneurship. I took classes on it and have applied those in small ways, but it can be glamorous from the outside. But I'd love to hear some superlatives from you guys. What's been the biggest positive, biggest negative, biggest surprise as you've been working on this latest venture? Any order.
Yeah. Do you have any surprises?
I
I think what you said is right. I kind of, as I started to kind of mentally in my mind think like, what do I want to say about entrepreneurship? I think it can be glamorous from the outside, and I think it's not always as glamorous on the inside. Actually, I think it's never as glamorous on the inside. So that's one thing I would say for sure. I think superlatives, like I'll have summers where I'll golf 4 times a week and it'll be all summer and it's great. But then you'll have your network get hacked by North Korean hackers, and you'll find out that there's a small folder that was not backed up, and now we need to rebuild all that coding. So then for 2 weeks you're all out, right? So I mean, I think that's my experience. I don't know what your guys' experience is. I think it's a different world. It's fits and starts is the way I would say it. And if you've got the attitude for it, if you've got the personality for it, it probably is better fitted for you. But things like that happen, and it's good, and then it's bad, and then it's good, and then it's bad, and I don't know. Am I wrong?
So
right.
He hasn't seen the downturn in the real estate yet.
Yeah, I know.
Good. Perfect. Yeah, I feel like talking about entrepreneurship, and if you remember this about me in business school, I was on a quest to find career and fit and match. It was a lot of what I did, a lot of the self-discovery because I wanted to do work that I loved. And I've continued in that in the entrepreneurial field. But as I get more and more into entrepreneurship, I almost feel like saying, let's talk about entrepreneurship is like saying, let's talk about business. Entrepreneurship is as vast as the oceans are large, and can be totally different. Like my wife is an entrepreneur, and she's interior designer, and she works part-time and is a mom part-time and works at home. Completely different than what I do and what Adam does and what Trevor does. And there's so many flavors of it. And even the concept of entrepreneurship is contradictory to itself. This is something I learned early on, which is the idea of entrepreneurship is finding new ways and being innovative and creative problem solving. And there's no right way to do that. And I had listened and heard the classes and in the books and heard people say, this is what it's like. This is what it's not like. If you have these attributes, you will be good and like it. And then you step back and say, well, is an entrepreneurship about making it whatever you want, solving whatever problem? And this idea of, well, entrepreneurs have to work a lot, work a certain amount of hours or not a certain amount of hours or sacrifice all these things. I used to believe that. And that was one of my initial understandings was, is an entrepreneurship about going your own way or doing your own thing? Those were some of the initial things that I questioned and actually went contrary to. And when I started my journey, it was, well, I'm going to do it how I want to do it. I want it to fit with what works for me instead of feeling like, and I take the tests and I talk to the people and they say, if you look like this, you would be a good entrepreneur. And that always held me back. And I know there's probably a lot of people in here who have been like, well, entrepreneurs look like this and I look like this. I like my family. And I do want to pull back the curtain. And
you kept the beard.
Sort of. Well, for those who had followed me on my journey, I didn't cut my hair or my beard for a long period of time. But it was this idea that kind of held me back for a long time of this is what entrepreneurship looks like, and you either fit it or you don't, or you fit finance or you fit marketing. I have found that, especially with entrepreneurship, why it's an oxymoron is it can be whatever you want it to be. And it can fit with your lifestyle and it can fit with your value system. And that was a big thing for me. Like, can I be an entrepreneur and chase dreams and unique things and have the other important things in my life taken care of? And that was the challenge. And there are trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. You just have to find your ZBB and put the things above. But again, like entrepreneurship is all about making it fit the way you want it to and being successful. So first surprise is that I could actually do it. That was kind of how I went into it. And I held the line and said, I won't go below the line. And if I do, then maybe it's right. But every time I got close to the line, it was just another problem to solve. How do I stay above the line and keep my sanity or keep my integrity or keep my hair? Yeah. And good entrepreneurs are good problem solvers, and you just figure it out. The other big surprise was there's a lot of things that are scary when you're in corporate jobs, like insurance and stability and what your wife is going to think about stability and benefits. But anything is scary until it's not. Anything is abnormal until it's normal. And as I went out and left corporate America and stable jobs and figured out what it's like, now it's normal. And it's just as normal as it was in corporate America. Like, there's no
You gotta
monopoly.
admit you miss those benefits. I dream about those benefits.
I actually have. And we can define benefits. I actually had 2 babies and had way better insurance after I left Adobe than when I was at Adobe. Nobody tells you that. Like, they were free because Medicare is a thing. Like, there's a lot of things out there that you just don't know and you just think. And I hire a lot now, and I'm shocked. Like, you can go buy health insurance, guys. It's not like a scary thing. Health insurance is cheaper than my premiums at Adobe. Nobody's talking about that kind of stuff. That's just one example of those things that seem scary because you've never done it before. If you've always worked in a corporation where your retirement's taken care of and your benefits and your dental is all taken care of and your relocation, it's like, well, I've never done it. It seems scary. On the other side, where it's like anything. It's scary until it's not, until it's just a normal thing. That's been another surprise. And on the spouse side, which is another thing I talk to a lot of people about, it's become the same way. It's become normal to us. Not that it's easy, not that it's without challenges, but it's what we know and what we do. And that's been surprising. I thought it would be more like a grind or abnormal indefinitely.
Yeah.
But humans are adaptive. We figure stuff out.
How about you, Adam?
I'm gonna, instead of surprises, I'm gonna call them revelations.
Okay.
I feel like it was kind of just like discoveries for me. So one is, I've been surrounded by like top 5 or 10% thinkers here with you guys and in jobs for a long time. And it made me feel like I'm on the lower rung or just an average thinker. And when I go out into the world and I become a B2C type business owner, you guys are top 5 or 10% thinkers on the planet, okay? And so there's some confidence that comes when you realize that, like, I'm kind of smart. I'm smart. So that was a really powerful and confidence building revelation for me. And Nick talked a lot about boogeymen, the boogeymen of healthcare, and there's the boogeyman of my own confidence. Is anybody going to want what I have to sell? There's the boogeyman of There's the boogeyman of like, I just lost my train of thought because I was thinking about Nick.
Happens to all of us.
All these boogeymen that you have to deal with, like, is my product going to be whatever? Is my idea good enough? Is my idea good enough? And revelation number 2 for me was I chose entrepreneurship. I didn't choose an idea. And if my idea is not good, I'm going to change it. I'm going to go do another idea, you know? I honestly have somebody come take me to lunch every single week that's like, you finally got out. Tell me how you got there, you know? And seriously, 80% of the time they're like, I just don't have my idea yet. And I'm like, screw the idea. Like, just go execute well on something that's already working. Like, there's just so much opportunity out there to go. Anyway, so revelations, discoveries of myself, like I'm capable. There's 3 million people, even if my business is tiny here, just locally, Wasatch Front. There's 3 million people here, and there's gonna be 100 or 200 people that like what I have to say. It's just a math game. So let's go get it, you know?
Thanks. Before we leave superlatives, I know one of the biggest challenges is hiring. And Bills, you want to talk to us about hiring?
Yeah, I'm going to give them for sure. It's funny. I look at these guys, and these guys have been into it. And a lot of you guys, I remember seeing you guys back at like 10 years ago. You guys were already kind of entrepreneurs, and I never was. And kind of got into entrepreneurship in the last 2 years, right? Kind of COVID opened the door to go in, and I'm a super risk averse guy, and kind of jumped into this, and holy hell, right? Like it's no joke. I love it. You want to pull your hair out and you reach these challenges, and Russ kind of pointing it out for me right now. It's like the hiring piece, right? Like I've established this platform. We're doing it's all natural home scenting and aromatherapy, and then we're going like bridging into beauty, health, and wellness. And it's called Helse, H-E-L-S-E. It means health in Norwegian, a little bit of a nod to my grandma Elsie. And we've established this platform, and we've got some awesome traction from like a B2B perspective. And we've got our website in place and good beta feedback with our target. And I think we've created a brand and products that are pretty sexy. I'm really excited about them. But for the love, a digital marketer, right? Trevor has been close to me on this. I talk to him pretty often on it. And it is so hard to find a broad strokes digital marketer that's hungry, right? I mean, you can have this opportunity, and we're scaling through the VC-PE model. We raised kind of friends and family, and we're positioned to raise a pre-seed round. And before we do that, having that seat filled with the right person. So for me, mine is for the right person. If this thing goes, there is a wealth generating opportunity from an equity standpoint. But hiring good people, right? Hiring the right person. So for me, I'm looking for a digital marketer that's hungry, that knows paid search and paid media, can run CRM and Klaviyo on the back end, and let me go out and do the retail, wholesale, B2B side, right? It's a direct to consumer business. So for a good time, call Tyson at 801-319-6157. But yeah, holler at your boy and let me know if you have anybody in mind. I'm filtering right now, and it's not easy to find that committed type person to go in. But thanks, Russ.
You got it. I imagine from the outside, again, that there's a point where like you jump in, where you make the decision, either I'm leaving the job, or I'm leaving what I was doing before, or like I've been halfway in and this is it. How did you know it was time to take on this next project?
I think what Adam said is exactly right. It's I remember when I first came to the MBA program and we were in the class together. It was like the first time in my life where I was like in a class where I wasn't like one of the smarter people in the room. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that as an arrogant thing, but the bottom line is the people who are watching and people who are here, we're smart. We wouldn't be here if we weren't smart. You just can't do that, right? And so when you kind of realize that, like Adam said, it wasn't an idea. It wasn't a time to jump in. It was a time to jump into a real estate agent role, which is a known role. It's a known thing. He knew he could be successful at it if he put his head down and did it, and he's smart enough to do it. And then he was going to continue to look for future opportunities. And I think that's like my whole life. Like that's every single time I do something, it's always like I've always got my radar up. And when I see something that looks interesting, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to look at that. Oh, that's actually interesting. 9 out of 10 times they're not interesting when you look at them. But occasionally they are interesting. And then all of a sudden you go, you know what? How can I put my toe in this and not fully commit? Because I'm risk averse too. You wouldn't, everybody thinks I'm a wild man. I'm not. I'm risk averse. But there's a way to dip your toe in these things. And then as they manifest themselves, you gain confidence. And at some point you go, why wouldn't I do this? I'd be crazy not to do this.
Let me add another view onto that question. I want to piggyback off my earlier statement. Entrepreneurship is vast as there are types of people. Because that's what I thought I should do for the longest time, and I never found anything. Oh, shucks. And I would go to the Tanner building in 710 and listen to the entrepreneur meetings and hear about all the people who fell into the idea or something happened or they just, something just happened to them. It never happened to me so far, up into that point in my life. And I was frustrated. How come it hasn't happened? How come the thing hasn't fallen into my lap or the idea hasn't presented itself? And the point about time, there's never a good time. When I left Adobe and started this company, I had 3 kids under 3 years old. And it was like, this isn't the time to start a company, but no time is a good time. What I did and how I approached it was a bit different. And everyone in here is different. So I would think about, I know lots of people in here are either entrepreneurs or thought about being entrepreneurs, or is that for me or not? There are lots of avenues to get there. But how I approached it, it was very helpful for me and my personality. And what was important to me was I attached to a problem that I was passionate about solving and not necessarily a solution. When I left, it's time to leave. I had focused on my strengths and self-represented at Adobe. And it was clear that that wasn't a good fit with the culture and style at Adobe. And it was time to go. But what I found was I found a problem that I was passionate about solving. And when I left, there was no product. There was no idea. There was no customers. There was a problem that I was passionate about solving. And I found other people who were also working on that and trying to solve it in an interesting and creative way. And it was a big risk. It was, it was a jump in. Why is it time? Because I decided, right? There's no formula for the right time. There's no formula for the right idea. These VCs and PEs try to figure out the formula for the right idea, the right company, and how to put it together. But, their hit rates are still, for any who took the VC class, you get 1 home run, you get 2 base hits, and the rest fail. And these are smart people who think about it all the time. So there is no right way. So I can't sit up here and say, this is how you know. Everyone's different. I didn't know. I just went for it. It was one of those things well, what else am I going to do?
For me, it was a combination of a couple of things. One is once you get there mentally, right? The boogeyman, I know how to deal with them, whatever. So it was a combination of that. It was a combination of, Tyson mentioned COVID opportunity. I ended up in a really bad boss situation at Adobe and was I had $100,000 in stock vesting in January and I was debating leaving in December. That's where I was mentally. And so that, I'm just willing to walk right now. I'll figure something out, I'm sure. So me being ready to go was a combination of like, do I have a problem? And I really believed in my problem and have for so long. Brokerage is broken. I really want to fix it. Am I confident and ready enough? And by the way, I'll tell you guys, like, it's humiliating going from corporate America and in the roles that I was having and being an MBA and now saying I'm a realtor. Okay. It's humiliating. I'm not kidding. Like, it took a lot of mental to get to a place where I like, and today, honestly, I can look everybody in the eye and say, I'm the best damn realtor that you're going to meet. And I don't care, but I had 2 professors when I was batting this idea around here told me I was a wasted seat in the program for even thinking about this. Okay. And it was, so it took me.
I want names. It rhymes with.
Rhymes with Schmiederson.
I'm gonna, we have time for one quick question.
Is he on here?
Is he on TV?
One more quick question to end. If you could recommend one tool or habit or practice that has made the difference for you as you're kind of out on your own, you don't have all the structure, governance that, you know, corporations do. What has been something that has made a difference for you in that?
Yeah, mine's easy. Find a partner. Find another human who can support you when you're down, and you can support them when they're down. That's made all the difference for me.
I haven't found the right partner. I'm honestly still looking. But working the mental game, like Nick said, like I spent the entire month of July on my back in a dark room last summer because my mental game wasn't as sharp, and you know, like it gets dark and really lonely, and it's not analytical. Like I could look at my forecast and I could see like next month is going to be $100,000 a month. Didn't matter, right? There's just these demons that work in you, and so getting that, whether it's partnerships, I got into yoga and meditation and haven't dipped back into it. So yeah, like keeping that mental game sharp through whatever tools has been my thing too.
I like both of those. I've always had a business partner. I've had the same business partner for 11 years now. So it's been a good partnership, and that makes a big difference for sure. On a partner, you need to make sure you don't find a carbon copy of yourself. You need to find the opposite of yourself. Make sure that you have different skills. I mean, there's no tool. I mean, it's like you keep saying, it's just a different thing. Like I always pursue small businesses. Like I'm not trying to become a .com millionaire. I like to build these small businesses. I'm good operationally. I can kind of build a team, good culture wise. And so I can get them up and running, and then I can get back to kind of being free to do what I want to do, which is kind of the only reason why I'm doing it, right? I like to golf and I like to screw around. So that's what I always do. I would say the biggest tool I would tell you is, I would say it's not for everyone. And I think you need to be really, really, really candid with yourself. And you might want to ask other people, like, what are my skills? Because you're going to need a very specific skill set to make it work. And it's a big issue, but the best tool is you. It's just a question of, are you the right tool for this, right? Does that make sense? There's never a magic bullet. There's never a magic bullet. And you've got to have the appetite for it. And you've got to have the personality for it. And I was like my dad was a salesman. I did sales for 10 years. I will say that's pretty helpful, right? I mean, when the fact that I can pull my flute out and whistle it and the mice follow behind me, that's pretty helpful when you're an entrepreneur. And I would say that's probably the only thing I would say that you want to be persuasive for sure. I don't know. It's hard.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, and good luck as it continues to go.
Thank you guys for putting this together.
Oh yeah, we've got one more speaker.
One more.
We got one more speaker. If anybody needs to cut out, that's okay. I know we're going over. But our last speaker at CosmoCon is Mr. Brad Moss. Brad is another entrepreneur, serial. He's the founder of Product Labs, and he and his wife Sarah have 5 kids, live in Olympic Heights, which I just found out is a thing.
Olympus Cove,
which I just refound out as a thing. And yeah, go ahead, Brad.
All right. Hey, thanks, Russ. Thanks, guys, for putting this on. Russ, everyone give Russ a. Lewis is done. Stepping up, doing it. Good job. Oh.
Yeah.
Except for the AV problem. There we go. Oh. Can I still use this thing? Yeah. All right. So talking about my 10 years in the bag is what I'm calling it. Didn't show up on there, but it's all right. Here's my family. So actually, I'll just look back here. So here's my little family. I have 5 kids. How many people have 5 kids? They got a couple. Wow.
On the way.
On the way. That's awesome. I remember in Seattle, like we would walk around with 3 kids, and people give us the dirtiest stares. 3 kids, and you don't have a dog. So, a couple of things I've learned. 4 main things: a little bit of business, and then a little bit of personal stuff. The first, well, I'll just run into these. Okay, so not smalls, but bigs. So when I was at my first time at Amazon, so at a business school, I did some entrepreneurship stuff. I actually got a little award, but I didn't go into it. I said, Amazon's it's the sure, safe pay for me right now. So I went to Amazon, and during my first time there, or my first project, my boss said, hey, take a look at this business analytics stuff. And so I took a look at it, and I created this business case, and I came back to him. I said, hey, here's this $30 million opportunity. This is so awesome. And he just looked at me. He just shook his head. He's like, no, we would never do that. I was like, wait, why? Like, it's $30 million. Did I do the analysis wrong? What's wrong? He's like, no, it has to be $1 billion or else we're not going to do it. So instantly, my mind just expanded. And I think many times for myself, and I still have to check myself on this all the time, is to think big and think a little bit bigger than how I just naturally do. So normally you say a tree from the forest. I like a tulip because it's different, but a tulip turned into, how could you do a whole field of tulips? So the opportunity, just so you guys know, that's the difference between $30 million and $1 billion. That's him saying, hey, here's the big opportunity. So the next, I built a little business plan. It was super hard to do at Amazon. I had, I think, 76 or 77 iterations on this business plan. It was terrible. It was good. And I built this Amazon seller app. And it was all about mobile. How do sellers sell with you? How many people have sold on Amazon in here? Actually, that's another good question. All right. So the little app that you use, that was my baby. That's what I did there. And after it was good and a success, I forgot the quote, but what's the quote? You know it, Russ. Success has many parents, and failure is an orphan. Something like that. Yeah. So as soon as I was successful, I failed there too, by the way. Or we failed to launch something. We were launching it and got the rug pulled out from under me right before. But then I went to do this, and after it was a big success, then all of a sudden, like, everyone's like, hey, I want to do it. I'm like, I am done with corporate America at this time. So I then bowed out of Amazon after 2 years. I went back to my gaming company, and we done a bunch of games. But then people with my Amazon experience, people just kept asking, hey, I need some help. I don't know how to deal with Amazon, and Amazon structure is still kind of bad from a business perspective. So I started this company, Product Labs. And I think one thing, a message that
has been true here, especially in entrepreneurship. If you find it, it's not just find your skill. It's something that if you find it easy, then that's probably something you're comfortable doing, and other people are going to find it hard, like almost no matter what. If you find it easy, other people are going to find it difficult to do, and find a spot that you find is easy and other people think it's hard. And still this day, it's like, oh, this is an easy problem to solve. And guess what? It's not easy. It's just you know how to do it. And you're really good at it. So start building all sorts of crazy stuff. This is how I look at the world. And I think Russ probably does too, just because I know all analytics and data stuff. All right. So then the next big thing that I've kind of learned, and this is a lot more applicable in just general life, but our inputs and outputs. So if anyone had a big, long priority list and it starts stacking up and it gets way too big, and I created this company and people were like, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And so it became this massive list of what to do. And it's like the endless to-do list. And I think we all have that in our lives. And I think it was forced on us in business school a bit, but I reinforced when I went to Amazon. And then again, when I started this company, is focus on what you can control that are going to drive your outputs in life. I think we call them inputs, and I call them inputs and outputs. What are the things that you can control? You can't control sales. You can't even control traffic, but you can control what you do to get that. So you can control how many emails you're sending out or how much you're spending on certain ads, right? You can't control how many people are clicking on the ads, but you can control what they look like, what they say, and the metrics from it. So definitely in life and in business, I've learned as a holistic perspective, whatever the output I want, I need to figure out the inputs that are going to drive whatever that output is. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir. You guys probably know all this stuff. But, I've been able to apply this a lot, even in mature companies. I recently sold my company, bought it back, sold it again, and I'm in a new organization. Essentially, I just shifted PE partners, PE funding that I'm dealing with. But even the new company, it's like, hey, all these people from great successful businesses don't even know like how to control the inputs and outputs of these things. And it's a very basic thing for me. So maybe that's a strength of mine that, but I think it just helps me sleep at night. And I think it helps me manage people too, understanding their inputs and outputs. So then I move into this piece of controlling life, which is more the personal side. So McAnally, he calls me every once in a while. And he's like, hey, I got this book. It's like scripture. I swear, he says I read it once every year just to recap it. And so I'm like, okay, fine. If you read it every year, maybe I should read it too. It's a great book called Resilience, and it's from a former Navy SEAL talking to another Navy SEAL after they're back. And it's basically just like a personal exchange, like 12 letters that they write back and forth about life. But it's like a lot about the philosophy of life, and just a lot of just kind of meat and potatoes, like common sense stuff that we should think about. But from this, I've realized in reading this is just kind of a small snippet in the book when I was going through it actually for the second time myself. The greatest lie we tell ourselves is that we can avoid hardship, and that that we can do something and it will be easy, or we can change this situation and it will be easier, or we're not going to have hard problems. I think that's the greatest lie that we can tell ourselves. I think society tells us all the time. I think that's marketing, right? That's the big marketing. It's like, hey, if you do this, all your problems will be solved. And with work and with life and being an entrepreneur, going into it, coming out of it, so many times it's like, hey, life will be easier if I do this, or certain parts will change when I do that. I think that's the biggest lie. And I think the thing that we can count on is that things will be hard. You can always count, no matter what you're doing, what you're in, family life, work life, social life, you're going to have hard things. They're always going to be hard stuff. So the question is, what can you control? Back to my obsession with controlling. So difficulty happens, but what can you control? And essentially, it boils down to probably two things you can control. First one, you can control what you're doing, essentially what you're doing, that what you're dedicating your life to, right? So I think to me, the entrepreneurship comes down to, hey, if I'm dedicating my life to something, is it something I really want to do and that I care about? I mean, fallers in movies and TV shows. Now TV shows. Yeah, that's out. He probably loves it. Like at the end of the day, like he'll make his millions and he'll be an old grandfather with kids and be like, I really liked what I did and I enjoyed it because he has a passion for it. And no matter what you're doing, I think you can control, but you've had hard times, especially when well, all sorts of crazy stuff happens, I'm sure. Yeah, you could give your own talk that's going to be an hour long about hard times in film. Agreed. Agreed. So like no matter what you're in, it's going to be hard. And sometimes like coming out of business school and just being in life, it's like, oh, it won't be as hard if I was not working for this company or if I shifted this or whatever. It's like if you like the work you're doing and it's like rewarding work to you, I found like that's the best. If you can control that, it's going to be hard. Just think when it's hard doing that work that you like, it's going to be hard doing no matter what work you like, so or what work you're doing. So you might as well be doing something that you like to do, and it's going to be hard while you're doing something you like to do, than being hard doing something you hate doing. And then the second one is who you do it with that you have control. Is who you're spending your time with. I've had business partners. I've had some good ones. I've had some bad ones. I've had folks stab me in the back. I've had all sorts of ranges of things. Hardcore guys from New York that would sell their own kid just to get a buck. I've just dealt with lots of stuff. I'm sure I'll deal with plenty more. But one of the biggest things when I did my company shifting over to this new group was, do I like these people? And when I go through hard stuff, do I want to be around these people when I go through it? Because, can you deal with hard people or these people that I'm dealing with? Am I going to enjoy? It's going to be hard no matter what. So is it going to be worth it that I'm going through it with these people? Are they reasonable people to be working with? And can we, have a good time at the end of the day? Or maybe not have a good time, but not hate each other at the end of the day. Still be able to be congenial to each other. So that's what I've learned with controlling life. And then the last one is while I was at Amazon, I think another thing that kind of kicked me out the door leaving there, I can be passionate about certain things and ideas and things I do. Because there's a talk by Elder Uchtdorf, and I can probably just read the whole thing. He says, and thus they go on living only a shadow of a life they could have led, never rising to the potential that is their birthright. As the poet lamented, these are among those unfortunate souls who die with most of their music still in them. As an entrepreneur, I think that's the reason I look for paths or look for things or problems I want to solve. Really, right now, I'm in this e-commerce world. And there's certain parts that I love about it. Other things I still want to do that are outside of that. But I think introspective, there's a part of inside of me. It's like, well, what's this music I have? What's the stuff inside of me that I want to still get out? I don't want to regret, life that I still have this piece inside of me. So, then I have a whole list of lots of things I've learned. Russ is still the man. You guys know he runs a page that has like 2.2 billion views a year. Like, talk about influence, this guy. McAnally loves teeth. Over 38 million teeth he and his team have reviewed. Running 5 miles is harder than running 10. That's a whole story. I think it's in our 30s. Who's over 50? Not yet. Pablo's like, hey, it's
I just turned 49.
There we go. So in our 30s to 50s, I think are actually our most productive, where we input ourselves into society.
Thanks. We've got a year left. Thanks.
Yeah. But after you're 50, then you become your influence mode. It's not your little less doer mode, in my opinion. So I need the sun. That's why I'm in Utah. Exercising sucks, but it's good. Family's awesome, and even more So the older you get, learn something about everything and everything about something. And don't be angry people. This is a lot of this stuff lately, last couple of years. If you're getting too angry, check your sources and maybe listen to stuff that doesn't make you as angry, and try and solve some problems. And the church needs us. It needs different people, different opinions. It needs all of us. And that's about, and life's short. One of my best friends died. So, sorry to go back one. That's it. Thanks.
I'd just like to close by really thanking everybody for showing up. I mean, this class is what we make of it, and these relationships are what we make of them. And so, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you to our speakers and our panelists for sharing your lessons and your thoughts. I was thinking if there was anything grand for me to share, and I don't, but there is a quote that I have thought of a bunch as we're back in this place where, for many of us, this journey started. And it's from T.S. Eliot. He said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know it for the first time." And for me, as I think about what the next decade holds in for us, it's exciting. You know, we'll see the many journeys that we have, and look forward to keeping on going on those with you all. So thank you.
This is awesome. So thank you for the ideas, thanks for the execution. All right, pre-after party is, let me stop the stream here. Thank you everybody for joining online.
6 o'clock?
Yeah, pre-after party, 6 o'clock. So it's